and I'm here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting April the 3rd, 2017. This week I wanted to work with one of my angel card decks, and the deck that I chose to work with for this week's reading is the Angel Tarot cards. They are by Doreen Virtue, Radleigh Valentine, the artwork is by Steve A. Roberts, and the deck is published by Hay House. So I have the deck on the table right in front of me. So I'm going to shuffle the cards. And as I shuffle the cards, I'm setting the intention for this space for this week's reading to be clear, so that the messages that come through the cards are also clear and easily understood by me, the reader, and for you, the viewer. And I'm framing that intention with this question that I always ask for my weekly readings, and that is, what do we need to know for the week ahead? What insight and guidance would be most helpful, that will be in our best and highest good as we move through the experiences that we have during this upcoming week? And one more time will be good. There we go. And now I'm going to cut the deck. I'm going to fan out the cards. And now I'm going to pick 3 for this week's reading. And I'm picking the cards in the fan that just call out to me. And now that I have the cards, I'm going to put the rest of the deck aside. So when I'm working with angel cards or tarot cards, or in this case, angel tarot cards, I tend to read them from left to right. So the first card at the far left is going to represent either a theme or an energy for the week, or a direct experience that we could have at the beginning of the week. So the card is the World card. Okay. So the World is a major arcana card, and so if you've watched any of my videos long enough to know that major arcana cards for me in a reading carry more weight. They represent important issues or events, and those events and those issues are designed for our spiritual growth and evolution or development. So the World card for me represents the successful completion of a chapter or a phase in our lives. For me, it represents a triumph, it represents a victory, it represents, again, some form of success. But with it, it again also represents there is something in our lives that's coming to some kind of end, or something that's being completed. But with that, I tend to look at the World as like a big picture card. For me, it represents a new level of awareness. So we've gotten to this point in our journey, because the World card also can represent travel. So we've come to this place in our journey. It's almost like having a full circle moment. So you know what those full circle moments are like. So you come back to the same place where you started, but you're a different person than you were at the beginning, right? So you've come back full circle, and you have this greater sense of awareness. It may even be that you are now seeing a situation that you've been moving through in a different way, because now you see it with a different sense of awareness, a higher level of consciousness about it, possibly. It's like the final piece of the puzzle has been put into place, and so now you can see the whole entire picture. You know, the interesting thing about being a spiritual seeker and that being a part of your spiritual path or journey is that we would love to have those moments all the time, those moments of hyper-awareness all the time. But you may have found, like me, like they are more fleeting, they're more elusive, they don't always remain, you know, and so you have to be thankful and appreciative of those moments when you have them, because I don't always find it to be like a constant state of being, right? So there's that. It's about like, we're moving through, the energy of this week is about what do we need to complete? It reminds me of what I said last week in last week's Kipper card reading when we had the bereavement card as the focus, right? So the focus was, how do we handle changes and transitions. Seeing the world card here in this light is making me feel like, did we complete those things that we maybe focused our energies on last week? And if so, let's do a happy dance, because this card is about, being successful in that. So it may be like being able to celebrate that. You may have a new level of awareness as a result of moving through that transitional phase of finalizing something or completing something, right? And with that now, we can introduce Archangel Michael into this, because Archangel Michael is the angel who's associated with this card. And for me, Archangel Michael is the angel of clarity about our life purpose. So maybe the world in that context is about, like, how do I serve the world in a big way, right? And so you're getting clarity about that. And in addition to that, now whether this is about life purpose or the action steps we took last week to complete things, Archangel Michael in that regard is about, clarity about the next action step we can take. So maybe you're in that state of completion, and then you're saying, I have a new level of awareness now. What do I do with this newfound awareness? Where do I go from here? Right? If you're completing one stage in your journey and we're about to take the step into the next one, what's the next step? Where am I going? Where am I moving into? And you're asking for clarity about like that. But for me, I tend to look at, like, when we're having an experience, this card for me represents like having a new level of awareness as a result of getting a glimpse of the bigger picture. So the text reads, a job well done. Joy, contentment, and gratitude. The path toward enlightenment. And so that's the energy this week with the World card. Moving to the next card, we have Knight of Fire. Okay, so now this is about focus, action, and direction, because it's a knight. And for me, I tend to read knights in that way. They always represent focus, action, and direction. Now, interesting thing with the World card and this card, they both represent travel and movement. So this could be about like moving forward. I talked about, like, with the World card now, we've reached a state or a stage of completion. And so now maybe we're embarking on a new path, a new direction, a new journey. And then the fire energy represents like being eager, being enthusiastic, being on fire, having a great deal of passion for that. Now, one of the things with the Knight of Fire in particular, for me, it can represent this idea of a return to university. That is actually one of my meanings for it. So for some people, the World card in that regard could be about, like, graduation, completing something in terms of like higher learning. So maybe you've graduated from a type of program, and now you're being led into, or you're feeling eager and enthusiastic about moving into the next stage of your educational process, and that may require going back to school to some degree for something. Could also be too that we're being called, some people may be actually moving or relocating or traveling with that, since both these cards are travel cards. With that, and I'm going to be dating myself, and I tend to with musical references, so I'm okay with that. But this card for me, there is a Pet Shop Boys song, and I think I've mentioned Pet Shop Boys before. I love the Pet Shop Boys, but there is a Pet Shop Boys song that is called Go West. It turned out it's a cover of a version by, of all groups, the Village People. Yes, I did say Village People. And so with that, sometimes when I hear Go West in my head, it can be about like literally somebody going west of where they are. So it could be somebody maybe moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, and my geography sucks, so that's a challenge for me. So it could be whatever part of the world that you're on that's on the East, could be about going west. So because I'm hearing that song Go West in my head. So the Knight of Fire could just also be being at a place or a stage where we're feeling kind of restless, because sometimes this card's about restless energy, a sense of wanderlust, that kind of thing, about moving on in that regard. So there may be some kind of energy that's prompting this need to explore a new direction or move down a new path, or whatever that may be for you. But it could be because I'm feeling a sense of wanderlust, or I'm feeling really restless. So I'm going to be looking at the text now. It says, a sudden event that needs immediate attention. Time is of the essence. Think things through carefully. So I want to go back to a sudden event that needs immediate attention. Sometimes for me, this card can represent a change being in the air. So it could just be like a change is prompting this need for immediate attention or immediate action, something of that nature. So I'm seeing that as possibilities for the Knight of Fire coming after the World card. Now moving to the final card for the week, we have, this is very interesting, we have the Two of Fire. So now we have two cards from the same suit. So fire as a suit can represent some things like things having to do with work, business, or enterprise. It could also represent about setting an intention, a new intention, and taking action on that intention, right? So again, the whole idea, what I said with the Knight of Fire about passion, the suit of fire can also be about creative passion. So it could be like, what are we passionate about? At this point, if we finished something, if something came to an end, successful end, and we're moving into what the next phase is going to be, then what are we passionate about? And how can we move forward with that sense of passion? So I think at some level we're being asked to look at what it is that we're passionate about. And as I'm saying that, I'm being reminded that Archangel Michael, who is the archangel that's presiding over the reading, if you will, I talked about Archangel Michael and life purpose. It could be about in terms of, coming into a greater sense of or a greater awareness of what your divine life purpose is. It starts with asking the question, what are you passionate about? Start there. So, Two of Fire is a card that's very interesting because we have two cards coming before it that represent like action and moving forward, that kind of energy. And the Two of Fire is about like being in the planning stage. Like you're planning something for the long-term future, right? And so I love the fact that it's coming on the heels of the Knight of Fire. I said the World card could represent graduation, and it does to some degree represent that either literally or metaphorically. And then the Knight of Fire is about the return to university. So we emerge from this experience having learned a valuable lesson, and then it's like taking that experience, that knowledge that's been acquired, that new level of awareness, and taking and running with it, if you will, and moving out into the world with this newfound awareness, right? So there's that. But if it's also about the idea about returning to university, returning to school, then the Two of Fire is about the planning stage for that, and putting that on a timetable, because like the World card, for me, this card represents like graduation and making plans after we graduate. And so maybe that's a commonality between the World and Two of Fire, bookending the reading. It's about like maybe either whether it's literal or metaphorical, we've reached a stage of graduation, and where do we go from here? What's the plan? Because like I said, this card is about the planning stage. And another thing that's interesting, that all three of these cards kind of share this. So there may be a message about moving. Part of that could be actually deciding where in the world would I like to be, geographically speaking, and then what would you need to do to ensure that you are in that destination, that you are in that location. Because the typical image of the Two of Fire, while I'm looking at the image with two men on the card, the traditional image, and I'm going with the Rider-Waite variation, it has a person who's holding a globe in one hand. And so that is like, of all the places in the world, where would you like to be? So there's that kind of energy with it. And about deciding where you want to be based, right? It could also be a person who actually travels the world, and the Two of Fire in that case, if you are employed or even self-employed. If you're employed, you may travel for work, and you may, travel internationally, right? And so there may be an international travel kind of thing to this. But also, too, if you're self-employed, it could be you deciding that you are going to take your market or your audience is going to now take on a more global or international kind of feel. Like it's going to be expanding to the point where maybe it was domestic or national, and now you're going to expand to now more global or international markets or demographics. And with that, then it could be one of the best ways to do that would be maybe instead of actually physically traveling, you work online, and now you're reaching out to people in other parts of the world. So there's that possibility. I'm looking for another message about Two of Fire, and this is what's coming to me in the moment. Sometimes the Two of Fire is about understanding that you are a co-creator with spirit in terms of your real world experiences, because I'm seeing that energy or that imagery of the guy holding the globe in his hand. So understanding that you're forming a partnership with spirit, and that in that partnership with spirit, you are co-creating your real world experiences, right? And so with that, that's a spiritual, but we can also be looking at the imagery back to the Two of Fire, the actual card in my hand, and it could be establishing a partnership with another person. The 2 is a number of partnerships and relationships, and then the fire is about work, business, things of that nature. And so it could be actually forming a business partnership, and it could be like going with the idea like maybe the other person is in another part of the world and you're forming a business partnership that way. So I'm seeing that. It could also be that we are progressing. I tend to look at fire energy as things having to do with social consciousness and social progression. So maybe like we're creating partnerships or relationships, or we're looking at forming those kinds of relationships and partnerships with the idea, the end result of doing something that's progressive on a social level. So there's that. I'm looking at the card and I'm reading the text. You've come into your own. New partnerships or contracts continue to move forward. So I like that. And so I'll end on the last sentence with this card, is continuing to move forward. So at the beginning of the reading, we talked about the world being a successful completion of a stage or a chapter in your lives. Let's celebrate that, but let's also not rest on our laurels. Let's continue, as we're celebrating the achievement, as we're celebrating the accomplishment, let's also be mindful of what's the next stage in the journey. What's next? And start forming a plan around how we're going to be moving forward on the heels of this success. And I want to say this. Sometimes when we have just completed something and we've completed something successfully, that's the best time to start thinking about the next thing, because we're in that space of feeling really confident, we're feeling enthusiastic, we're feeling pumped up, and that's going to be the fuel, the fire, if you will, that's going to keep us moving forward. So on that note, I will end and wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to first thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing our next video reading together in the same space. So until then, I'm wishing you a wonderful day. I'm hoping that you have a tarot-tastic week filled with love, light, and many angel blessings. Take care.